Welcome everyone to GPPAC's second Peace Education webinar. I'm very excited that you can join us today. I'm Denise Duzenli. I'm the Communications Advisor at GPPAC. And before we get started, I wanted to very shortly introduce GPPAC for the ones who are not familiar with us. So GPPAC was founded in 2003 and is a member-led network of civil society organizations working on conflict prevention and peace building across the world. And our mission is that, instead of reacting to conflict, that we really want to have a shift to the prevention of armed conflict. So we work together with our members who are based throughout the entire world. And we try to prevent violent conflict by focusing on human security, gender, dialogue and mediation, but also peace education. And since 2006, we have been working on peace education. Our members from all corners of the world have been working together to exchange information, their expertise, strategies, but also recommendations on how best to engage and collaborate with key stakeholders in their education systems. And so for this, our members have formed a peace education working group. And they've been very active, and it's a very unique working group as it brings together civil society, teachers, academia, representatives of ministries of education or other relevant government agencies. And we're very happy that they will be sharing their expertise through these webinars with you. And we have one planned every month. We kickstarted it last month with Jennifer Batson, and today is our second one. And today, Tatjana Popovic will share her experiences on school mediation and multi-ethnic communities in Serbia. Tatjana Popovic is an independent consultant and an experienced trainer within the conflict transformation field. And over the last 16 years, she has facilitated a number of interethnic dialogue trainings for teachers, education ministry counselors, and other representatives in Western Balkans. And she's joined by a special guest today, Biljana Lajovic, and she's the coordinator of the Unit for Violence Prevention within the Ministry of Education of Serbia since 2012. And she's also the senior advisor to the Minister of Education of Serbia. So we're very excited that she's also here. So a very warm welcome to both. And they will be starting now, but I just wanted to say, if you have questions, we will have time for questions at the end of their presentations. And you can send these to me via chat, or at the end, you can always also raise your hand and ask the question. So Tatjana, I give the floor to you.
So we will start. Denise already said a few words about both of us. I'm really, really glad that Biljana Lajovic, our partner from the Ministry of Education, could join us today, because we implemented many programs jointly, and we will continue to do that in the coming years. So quickly, I will talk from the perspective of civil society organization, which is Nansen Dialogue Centre, Serbia. I am coordinating the work of this organization also. And my main focus today is school mediation in multi-ethnic communities. Through the presentation, I will tell you how we combined actually dialogue as an approach, dialogue in interethnic dialogue in multi-ethnic societies of Serbia with school mediation for the purpose of reaching two important goals: improving ethnic relationships about many ethnic groups that live in Serbia and in the Balkans, and also preventing violence in schools. So to start, I will briefly introduce the work of Nansen Dialogue Centre. We have been active in peace building field since the year 2000. So we started working immediately after the conflicts in the Balkans. Therefore, we decided that our focus will be on improvement of ethnic relationships in Serbia and in the whole Balkans. You can see a little bit about me, and I thought it would be useful for you actually to see the why I do what I do, because this work has got many challenges, and through the years there have been ups and downs, and I was wondering, is it worth it? Shall I continue? And I still think that it is actually. And why? The answer is here, that I think it is important to support people in local communities and simply make them aware that they can be the ones who create their own environments, and they can also be change agents within their own environments. What we did through the professional trainings, we actually worked in parts of Serbia that are very multi-ethnic, because whole Serbia is really multi-ethnic country. And you can see why actually interethnic cooperation, and how we used professional trainings for teachers and for local authorities representatives to have the whole social process that we call step-by-step reconciliation. So we actually, through providing professional trainings for teachers, we also had one important goal, as I said in the beginning, improvement of interethnic relationships for the purpose of reconciling people after the terrible things that happened in the 90s. So since my focus is educational trainings, I will speak only about them. Professional trainings for local authorities had different focus and different themes. So we had trainings for teachers on peaceful conflict resolution and school mediation. And through that, we organized trainings in the southern part of Serbia and in northern part, which is Vojvodina. Here for you, just to locate ourselves, both Biljana and me, we are based in Belgrade, so that you can see a little bit our environment. But we work all over Serbia, actually in villages in southern Serbia and in Vojvodina, in small towns. So we spend very little time in Belgrade, but it is still beautiful, as you can see, and we are proud to live here. Also, my intention today is to connect the dialogue and this dialogic approach with school mediation. Why? Because through the experience, I realized that they are very interconnected, intertwined actually. And here is just a little reminder for you. I will not go into details of etymology in order to save time. Just to stress that for us, dialogue is both the tool for interethnic dialogue and also participatory process. You will see what that actually means. Maybe some of you experienced it actually, but for us, the most important thing is that this approach is based on people's needs. So we try to see what are the needs of a particular community and then work jointly with them. We don't create programs in some closed office. So that's why dialogue with people, dialogue with groups, with teachers, with local authorities is very important for us as starting point. And as I mentioned, we were present in the southern part of Serbia, where there are three major ethnic groups, Serbian, Albanian, and Roma. People live together there, but their relationships were almost broken after the wars. And we were present from 2007 to 2013. So we try as much as possible to be present in one community for a longer period of time, because that is the only way to make significant impacts and significant changes together with people with whom we work. Just to briefly, this is how I summed up interethnic dialogue. For me, it is a social process that requires courage, first of all, to enter the dialogue as a participant. Also for us as organizers, it took some courage to do that after the 90s. It requires openness, understanding of oneself and of the others, patience, and really conscious investment of efforts, because it takes time, as I mentioned. So through the time, people develop understanding and get to know each other better. But it is important that they have some joint activity that connects them, some mutual interest, actually. Who are facilitators? We had facilitators who were locals, like me, and my colleagues who are of Albanian origin, and the Norwegians initially, because they were completely neutral to the whole situation. So that is briefly about interethnic dialogue. As I said, there is a clear link between interethnic dialogue and school mediation. First of all, we started organizing trainings for teachers in this southern part of Serbia that I mentioned, for the purpose of upgrading teachers' professional skills, and also, again, to connect people across ethnic divisions, because all our trainings are multi-ethnic, actually. So they always had the double purpose. In the beginning, you may remember that I mentioned this step-by-step approach to reconciliation. That's what it is, because we didn't invite people to talk about reconciliation, but to experience it through the process that was much more than the training. We organize social events for people to simply spend time and to see and understand each other. Then next, our next phase started in Vojvodina, very similarly. So as I explained, we always have tailor-made trainings based on people's needs, and they differ a little bit in primary and in secondary schools. During all trainings, we try to involve people as much as possible and their experiences also. So we try to elicit the knowledge that they already have, to combine it with our new skills, and then to hopefully produce something new. What are the objectives of this school mediation training? You can see here that famous knowledge, skills, and competencies, but also building capacities for constructive conflict resolution. So these are not only merely acquiring skills, but they had a lot of practical trainings, how actually to resolve certain conflict situations. Also strengthening social skills. This program is very good for strengthening social skills, and to talking openly about responsibilities and rights. Particularly in our schools, teachers notice that children are often well aware about their rights, but tend to skip responsibility part. So that is also the good practice for teachers gain some skills how to deal with that actually during the regular classes and when they provide trainings for students for school mediation. How we organized the whole process. We, as I said, tailor-made programs, but based on the evidence, what is needed. Biljana will talk more about teams for prevention of violence. There are teams for prevention of violence in each school, and we ask them to bring some cases of conflicts so we can practice on them. Based on that, we develop role plays and ask them to simply practice during the trainings and to develop creative solutions based on the skills and knowledge they heard and acquired during the trainings. What is very important for us is this sentence in red, that we provide trainings for teachers, but then teachers work with students. They organize workshops along the whole period of time for students. This is just for your information that there are really a richness of ethnic groups living in Serbia, and that largest ethnic groups have schools in their own languages. I will not go into details of that. And then why school mediation? Because we try to connect with the article of law. Again, Biljana will tell a little bit more, because it says strengthening upbringing component of educational institutions through creation of programs for prevention of violence. That is us. So not only resolving existing conflicts, but trying to, by providing trainings both for teachers and especially for students, to invest over the time in prevention of violence in schools, in primary and secondary schools in Serbia. And why school mediation as methodology? Because it is methodology and mechanism that we developed for prevention, because it proved in some other countries, but also in our case, that it simply has got human face, that it tries to analyze human behavior. It is affirmative. We don't ask students who is guilty, who did that, how did you dare, and such things. But we try to understand dynamics of conflict, to see why that happened, what was the background, who was involved, were there any needs that were not satisfied, and maybe that was the base for the conflict. And to sum it up, I simply put positions, interest, needs analysis. We always do them because they are extremely useful and important. Many teachers told us, for example, that they were not aware of their own needs. And then they learn how to recognize the needs of students, of course. Then we talk about interest-based negotiations during mediation process, but in the way that you're aware that the other side has got their own interest as well. So how to find the good balance between these two. What are the themes? You can see, I mentioned dialogue, so it is important to improve communication and all those important skills like active listening, empathy, and so on. And then we do really serious analysis of conflict. And then we start practicing mediation skills. Here, I will only stress the role of mediator and how it is different from the role of teacher. Many teachers are struggling to unroll themselves from the role of teacher because they are used to it, first of all. They believe that they protect children if they make decisions in their own, in the name of students, actually. And it takes some time for them to understand that as teachers, mediators, they are there simply to empower students to use their own skills and to resolve the conflicts by themselves. And then what is called mediation? Understanding and acceptance of different identities, investing time in conflict transformation process. As I mentioned, not trying to see who is guilty and to bring immediate solution, but to try to involve all parties and to bring them to the solution in their own ways. Because when parties own, as we say in mediation, if they feel that the solution that they reached is something that they are satisfied with, that they worked on them, then it is much more likely that the solution will work out in the practice. If someone decides instead of the parties, then these solutions are not stable actually in the real life. And I said, I mentioned here that legal solutions sometimes only stop the conflict immediately. They are important, but they don't resolve the essence or the root causes of the conflict. So these are some pictures from the mediation role play that you can see teachers practicing in action. What I said on the real life cases, they usually bring cases from their work practice. This is also one of the trainings, and mediators in action. And this is how the cooperation with the ministry started. Actually, you can see on the left hand side Biljana Lajovic with the green scarf, and myself on the right hand, and some of our colleagues during one of the first trainings in Vojvodina. So we had support from the local authorities representatives. And then these are students. They are the most important party in this. And now we agreed that we'll switch. So Biljana will continue by giving you a little bit of legal framework, and then we will be open for questions. So Biljana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Tanya. I'm Biljana Lajovic, as they mentioned before, and I'm really very grateful to participate, to have a chance to participate in this webinar, because I'm a little bit excited because this is my first time to participate in such kind of training, although I had so many trainings in my life as a facilitator, as a creator, and in many different roles, but never this one. So this is my first time, and and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm coming from the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development from Serbia. And in 2012, it was established Group for Protection from Violence and Discrimination. And we introduced SOS telephone, which was introduced for counseling, information, and reporting violence in school. And it was very good first step for a systematic and system approach to violence prevention in and in the schools and among the children. Just for your information, in Serbia we have 18 school directorates. It means that Serbia is divided on 18 territories, and in each of these directorates we have counselors who are specially trained for dealing with violence prevention. On the other side, we have education inspectors on each level, local, meaning municipality, city, and republic level. So we have a kind of net for dealing with different issues in violence prevention. In our basic law and education, we have some education objectives which are put there to lead us towards society without violence, which is really challenging objective, and it is kind of long-lasting process. So you can see that we start from positive human values and developing different kind of values which would help us to raise up children with the specific skills, competencies, so they can solve their conflicts on the best possible way. What we want to point is that we do not say we are building peace without world without conflicts, because it is almost impossible. And as far as I'm a psychologist, I believe that conflicts are very useful when they are solved on constructive way. So that is why we try to learn our students how to get along with their own conflicts and conflicts with others based on different routes. So you can see that we have as one of important objectives development and respect of national, religion, racial, cultural, etc. characteristic, and we just would like to point that we nurture our difference and diversity. What is important when we talk about violence prevention in education system is that we are very much focused on evidence-based and researches which are done in cooperation with the different experts in Serbia on special types of violence. It is bullying, digital, gender-based violence, and violent extremism. So we think, and based on that, we develop different programs to deal with these types of violence, not specifically and only on these types, because we know that there is not only one component of violence, you always have different components in this violence. During my working experience, I realized that it is not important just to have competencies which are in this way of life skills, but you have to have developed laws and bylaws, because people usually like to have something firm to lean on. And they always say, is it written in some law? Are we obliged to do something? And that sometimes helps to develop different skills of teachers. So in basic law or education, we have special articles prohibiting violence. Then we have, as you can see, few rule books which are very much connected with the experience we had during all these years, because first time we started to deal with violence on quite systematic way in 2005. So you can see that we have procedures, then we have a rule book for recognizing discrimination, for reacting, then a rule book on community service. And I would like to point this last one because we introduce in that rule book restitution, on meaning restorative discipline. And of course, as one of the means to introduce that, we use mediation, especially peer mediation, is very important. For a rule book, and it is important to say that they help teachers to follow certain steps, and they just can see what are I dare to say obligatory steps when violence happened, and we did it through defining different levels of violence, then criteria for estimating levels, procedures which are adequate for each level, because you cannot work on every kind of violence on the same way. You have to adjust your approach to the level of violence and types. And it is important that everyone in school, every employee in school is obliged to do something when he or she is aware that violence is happening. So they cannot turn their heads on the other side. And of course, what is important is that we are focused on building networking in cooperation with different local stakeholders, meaning social welfare, health and police, and of course with different NGOs in the field of prevention. Intervention is based on the system or on state, but prevention, one state cannot finish alone, but civic society is extremely important in that part. And what is also important, that we really believe that only whole schools approach. I would like to say that maybe it would be more correct if I say whole community approach, whole society approach, but if I'm talking on behalf of Ministry of Education, I cannot say for other systems. So we are focused on whole schools approach. And in our schools, we have obligatory trainings for teachers and school pedagogues and psychologists. And I have just one small hint here. In each school in Serbia, we have pedagogues or psychologists who are focused on education system. And we have those trainings which are organized by the ministry. Then we have peer violence prevention and all these different kinds of violence prevention. And what is important, that we have some practice books which are available in electronic form with some samples of workshops. So each and every teacher can go on site of the ministry and find these practice books, read about phenomena, get some knowledge on data, because as I told, we based our work on researches, and then find, as a sample, find some workshops that they can use. And of course, it is obligatory for school principals to attend special training on violence prevention. What is it is important to stress that we have a parents' textbook as a tool for teachers to work with parents, because there is always some sort of challenging in that area. As I told before, this rule book on prevention of violence defines different types of violence and different levels. So you adjusted procedures according these types and levels. And it is important that we use as a criteria age, potential risk, consequences, personal characteristic, frequency of violence, duration, etc. It means that you do not have kind of automatic approach, but you have to discuss every type of violence among teachers and then decide what to what to do, what would be the most appropriate steps. And these steps are, we use them only for bullying, for peer violence, and any kind of adult violence towards children is absolutely prohibited, and it is forbidden, and it is treated as a severe obstruction of duties of teachers. At school level, as I told previously, we believe in whole school approach, and it means that in school you have team for violence prevention and program, and it is obligatory. There is no school in Serbia without these two, and this program is usually included in annual school work plan. So it is available to everybody, to all teachers, to all parents. As far as I believe that in each country it is like that, the teachers, while they are finishing their studies, they're not very well educated in all these, let me say, life skills and this different kind of competencies which might help them to provide children with the skills to resolve conflicts, to mediate, to help others. So they have to make plan for professional development, which should be in accordance with the context, needs, and situation analysis. Every school is obliged to have a rule book on safety measure, which is specific for the schools, and of course defined rules of acceptable behavior of pupils, students, and of course parents and adults, because we cannot force children to do something if we are not good sample for them. Now I would switch a little bit on our partnership with the Nansen Dialogue Centre Serbia, because we cooperate for quite a long time, and almost from the very beginning of establishing Nansen Dialogue Centre Serbia. And it was kind of very important event when memorandum of cooperation was signed between institutions and Nansen Dialogue Centre. And it is important that Nansen Dialogue Centre participate in professional development for teachers and organize teacher trainings, which are part of professional development, especially when we have in mind that there are four sets of competencies. And if you follow these four competencies, you will see this number 3 and number 4, student or child development support, and communication and cooperation. And all these things that Nansen Dialogue Centre Serbia is doing is very strongly connected with these 3 and 4, and believe it or not, with number 1, because in our booklet we developed, I say we because it was developed by Nansen Dialogue Centre Serbia, Nansen Dialogue Centre Montenegro, Ministry of Education from Serbia and Montenegro. There is a booklet with samples of classes in which there is typical class with some hints and connected with the conflict resolution, mediation, and actually developing communication skills for children. So it is not something additional, but it is incorporated in curricula, what we find very, I might say, exciting, because it is kind of new approach. I would finish with one picture. This is on the left hand side, is with in dark blue suit with blue tie, is Minister of Education, Mladen Šarčević, and behind and just next to him, that is Biljana Lajovic, and next to her is Tatjana Popovic, and on the other side there are representatives from the Ministry of Education from Croatia, and it was beginning of a meeting which was and on that way we started project of intercultural cooperation between education institution of Serbia and Croatia, which is really challenging, and we are very proud that we are still going on with that project. And this is one meeting in one part of Vojvodina where we were talking with a really huge group of parents and teachers on violence prevention and conflict resolution. And this is how they work. We always like to put some photos just to have, others can have impression how it looks like. And this was a regional steering group meeting in July, in November, and that's who we are. And now Tanya will say a few words about challenges and dilemmas, achievements.
Yes, yeah, we agreed. I will stop this presentation now here, and I will try to go back to mine. If not, I will. It doesn't matter for now. I will just say. Can you see my screen now? New share maybe. Okay. Is my presentation now on? I think.
Yes, yes, yes.
Good, thank you. So just a little bit about challenges and achievements. I talked a lot about not to waste too much time, but maybe, yes, you can see the methodology I mentioned already. But the whole process, I think that it is worthwhile that in each school we have the process of choosing students. After teachers have passed the trainings, then they need to decide how to choose the students who will be trained to become mediators. And they choose both so-called good students and students with problematic behavior. That is important to stress, because in that way they are given responsibility to do something different. And then we try to establish peer mediation clubs, sorry, in each school, so that students could have a completely neutral space where they will try to resolve the conflicts. And these are some of the benefits, that the work is, the focus is on preventing destructive and violent conflicts. I already mentioned the second benefit, the given responsibility to students, but many examples show that when students have responsibility to take care about that neutral space, for example, that they have the key, they clean the space, they invite their peers to the processes, then they behave completely different. And I wanted to, and I will go back to the challenges. I wanted to mention some of the examples, because I think that's the best way to describe what are the benefits. That in one school in southern Serbia, the two teachers mediators and the peer mediators started resolving the conflict that looked like a simple quarrel of two students in the corridor. And sorry, when they started analyzing and talking to them separately first, they had to talk, they had to have shuttle mediation first, and then brought them together. They found out that actually there are two groups of students from two different schools that are fighting after the classes, and that nobody knew about that. They really agree when and where to meet and to simply have fights, and they almost thought it was fun. So that is where teachers mediators had completely closed process. They really followed this principle of confidentiality in mediation until they gained some information and until they gained trust from students that they could analyze, they could sensitively approach and decide how to deal with the whole situation. And that is what they told us, that their impression was if they started to cut and immediately decide on legal measures, that they would probably lose the confidence of students, and that those fights would stop for some time, but probably they will continue after several months. And with the mediation process, they talked with them, they tried to bring them together to face each other, to decide why they are fighting, to to simply see each other in different light, and that is development of relationships that we mentioned. Since this process lasted for several months, they reached the joint solution, and they completely stopped fighting. And only after that they informed the school and the parents. Of course, for violent behavior, some legal measures had to be undertaken, but this the process of improving relationships was far, far more important. That is something that I will stress, and many teachers, when I tell them that they have to keep everything that happens in mediation clubs stays there, that this is a clear example why it is very important, why it is beneficial for the process actually. And I will not talk about the second example, but I will just mention that the whole school, they had the problem to decide on how to celebrate graduation day. And it was the principal who invited everyone, teachers, students, and parents, to come what we call conference mediation, to jointly discuss that. And it took them several sessions, and eventually they decided on what was the simplest and better way to organize graduation day, not to make the whole fuss around it, because that is the tendency in the recent year in Serbia at least. So these are the examples and the challenges, clear challenges that we are all humans, and I'm saying that without judging anyone, but it is not easy to break the habit, to decide immediately. This student decided the punishment and that's it, or go and talk to your fellow student, to your friends, you need to behave nicely and such. That does not work in practice. So that's why it is important to work on actually providing space to teachers to talk to each other and to realize that someone else is doing that it is not so difficult to break the habits. Also, parents are a very important link here, almost a missing link, I have to say, because schools are always complaining that they need more presence from parents, they need cooperation from parents, and we try to involve them in our trainings and to inform them what is happening in mediation clubs. Support from local authorities, I briefly mentioned, but it is important because of this whole community approach that Biljana mentioned, that at least representatives from local community know what is happening, that the word is spread, that some positive processes are happening in schools, that it is positive, that it is possible to have different solutions, and also because it is important to cooperate when there is the need. And some schools accept to include mediation as a regular mechanism, and some schools simply do it while we are present, we as facilitators, or we as NGO, or we as representatives of Ministry of Education. And when no one is controlling the process, it simply dies out, which is too bad, but that's how it is. So some schools continue and some simply don't. And I think that that's better to stop here. We have more pictures, and this is, yes, that is one more sentence from my side, and that's it. That Biljana mentioned this. It is the collection of best practices. It is the textbook, or practice book is probably a better word. It talks about the good practices from the good lessons from practice, and half of it has got really classes and the description of classes, methodology, what materials to use, on how to integrate peace education into regular subjects, not only mediation. So it is on our website and it is in English. If you're interested, you can take a look. And I believe the two of us will stop talking now and wait for your questions. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tatjana and Biljana, for your very interesting presentations and very interesting stories and expertise. So thank you. I would now like to open the floor to questions. Does anybody have questions or comments for Tatjana or Biljana?
I have a question, or could I?
Yes, of course, please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. My name is Carla Schrammler. I'm working for Berlin Center for Integrative Mediation. We are based in Berlin, but we are having projects in Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina mostly. And we're working in the field of dialogue and mediation. We're intending to work more in the field of school mediation. So I'm in particular interested, and thank you very much for the very interesting insight into your experiences. So my question would be, I mean, you already mentioned, Tatjana, that it was difficult to institutionalize the mediation within the schools. And I was just interested, maybe you could explain a little bit more how you were trying to institutionalize it and how you organized the whole thing of passing on the knowledge from the teachers to the students, and how it worked with the peer mediation, and if you had some kind of backup for the students, I don't know, some kind of intervision, supervision, I don't know, this kind of things would be very interesting for me to know. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carla, and thank you for your interest. And I'm glad to hear that more people work in this field. So yes, we had the whole. First of all, it is important for the programs to be recognized by school authorities. So in the time when we started working I mentioned in 2007 in South Serbia, we had our program was recognized. It was on the list of the Ministry of Education. That's how it is one of the ways to have the recognition of the program. Nowadays, our programs are accredited by the school authority, which is another school authority, ZAUD.
Institute for Education, Upbringing and Development.
Yes, yeah. So they give official accreditation, and our accreditation is valid for 3 school years now. And it is great help to schools because teachers get points for professional upgrading, and that's how some schools invite us without even knowing who we are. That is one side, that is a kind of legal side, so that schools know that we are recognized by the system. And our methodology was to train certain groups of teachers. In Bujanovac, for example, in southern Serbia, we would have the group comprised from 4 schools initially, and at later stage from 6 primary schools, 4 to 5 teachers from each school, so that they have core teachers, mediators group. They would pass our trainings that at the time they lasted for the whole school year. And then we will jointly create the programs for students, and they were obliged to give the workshops on the following school year. And we would supervise. I believe that is your answer to your question. So me and my colleagues would go and help them. We call that supervision or consultancy meetings, but we were helping them. And we do have practice books, so that other practice book, not the one that I showed, but we, as a center, we have 3 practice books. So there is also another practice book which is specifically on school mediation, which was developed by GTZ. It is German-based organization, but they did it in Serbian language now. And we have memorandum of understanding, so we are allowed to use that book in schools, practice book in schools. So that is how, and we always follow up what is happening in schools, try to support teachers, and it proved to be the good system both in southern Serbia and in Vojvodina. And then consult with teachers when they have some case, and sometimes when it is difficult, how to do it, how to continue. Another thing that we did, we brought the students from different schools, and they organized the public presentation on what they learned during mediation clubs, and they even presented some, not cases, but they presented what empathy means for them, for example, how they understood some of those skills. And again, they spent some time, children from different ethnic background, preparing this public presentation for their parents and teachers in schools. So that was another benefit. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
If there's no other question, I might have another question.
Please go ahead.
It was just that I was wondering, you said there was like a training program for the students. Was the program part of their regular curriculum, or is it more of extracurriculum activities, or were it? I don't know. Like
it is in our case, it is extracurricular activity when they do mediation, but the teachers are, Biljana mentioned these school plans. There are annual school plans, and teachers are in any case obliged to plan even these extracurricular activities. So in the schools that have school mediation as mechanism, they understood that it would be useful for them to put mediation as extracurricular activity. And in case of schools in Bueno, it's because we were present for a long time there. They used to have 2 workshops per week, or they would do it during weekend when they intensively trained peer mediators.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe Biljana wants to add something.
I just would, if I may, I would just like to add that as teachers usually do not have those skills, they are going to practice this kind of old, I would call it old-fashioned approaches, you know, just to say a few words and try to make peace in a second between children. And we try to persuade them that you have to go, as Tanya said, to roots of specific conflict. So we introduce within this one of the rule books as a tool, we introduce counseling, peer mediation, and mediation. So we just would like to point that there are tools, that they exist, and they can go on training to learn how to do that. And from my point of view, it is only important to get in as a first step. And when they realize that it is very useful and it, let me say, works for on a long term, then they are going to practice it and recommend to the others, because it is very important when teachers recommend one to another that they have past training which was very useful. So we try to promote these kind of competencies, and they can learn how to do that, that it is not some kind of magic, that it is something that they can use it always during all their work time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's another question from Christina.
Yes, Denise, thank you. Thank you very much, Tanya and Biljana, for your presentation. So I have 2 questions. First, could you please tell us something more about collaboration on school mediation in the region? So how do you, so you already mentioned, Biljana, collaboration with the Croatian Ministry of Education, but if you can also name some other examples, also how do you share good practices, and how do you exchange experiences with the colleagues in the region? And then the second question is related to the collaboration between civil society organizations and Ministry of Education in Serbia, which you already named at the end of your presentation, Biljana, about collaboration between Nansen Dialogue Serbia and the fact that you're presenting together. I think so. It already shows this great collaboration. But if you can also name some other examples, and also from a perspective of Nansen Dialogue, how do you, how you're engaged in policy aspect, and how do you lobby for your suggestions on school mediation, and yes, how, if you can provide more some other examples of this great collaboration. You already mentioned that there are some joint programs, but that there will be also next ones. So if you can provide some more information on that.
Yes, thank you very much for that question, because that regional process or regional processes, I have to say, because there are several, are very important and very dear to us because we have really good cooperation, both Biljana and I and the whole group. We had throughout the years, since I mentioned that we are active since 2000, since the year 2000. We are first of all, we are the member of Nansen Network, Nansen Dialogue Network in the Balkans, and then we are proud member of GPPAC Network, and it has got many benefits. So I will concentrate on region. We had regional processes. With Montenegro, I will mention the first, because that is really dear to us, and the practice book that I mentioned, that you saw, the link for the practice book for Education for Peace, Good Practices, is the clear product, concrete product actually of cooperation of this group. The regional group was comprised of ministries of education representatives from Montenegro and from Serbia, and depending on occasion, some participants from Bosnia and Herzegovina and some from Croatia were joining us. So during this period that I mentioned, from 2000 until today. So between Serbia and Montenegro, we had practitioners, teachers, and ministers of education, and this Bureau for Advancement that we mentioned, they were also present. So that process concentrated on exchanging good practices and influencing policies, as Christina mentioned, because we jointly, it is important that combination is successful, actually, that I mentioned, people from education institutions, from schools, and from civil society. We jointly exchange what would be good to change, or some changes were under their way already, but we influenced them a little bit, like the strong group, by drafting recommendations to education, to ministries of education. So among some of the achievement is that one article of law in Montenegrin law also recommends the school mediation. I forgot, was it the number 5, or I think so, yeah. Our colleague Branka invested in that a lot. Also, we jointly planned some of the programs for the regional training, again, connecting the articles of law with the practice, or people from the institutions clarified on many occasions how to implement or heard from practitioners what are the challenges, what is working in practice and what is not working in practice. So these are the benefits of this regional cooperation, that then teachers and practitioners, when they went back home, then they spread the word in their own schools. Almost each teacher gave the lecture, the workshop to the colleagues on what was happening there. Another benefit from there is also including elements of education for peace in different subjects, school subjects like mathematics and geography, history. We had one history teacher who was really persistent to have, we would say, realistic view, or as normal as possible view to history, and to include education for peace there as well. So that is how our also we provided the trainings for the regional group. That is what I mentioned, that one group was comprised of teachers from Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Montenegro. And they passed the training that was combination of conflict analysis, social skills, education for peace, and mediation. And they also send us some examples how that helped them in dealing with conflict situation in their own work environment. And I think that it's better that Biljana explains again a little bit from the institution.
If I understood properly your question, I would like to point that Ministry of Education in Serbia is quite open towards different organizations from civic society, depending on their topics, on their focus of work. And we cooperate with different organizations, as well as domestic and international, because it is I think now it's kind of common knowledge that there is no capacities in any ministry or any state organization to fulfill all requests of so quickly developing society. So you need to have kind of net in this area, and we have very good cooperation or in different fields. I can talk about this kind of let me say violence prevention, but it is not only violence prevention, it is all combination about how to develop different kind of life skills and how to train teachers so they can work with children, but not as a specific extracurricular activity, but as a part of everyday routine. And we always point that every teacher should be a sample for every children, every student, how to behave, what to do, how to react, and etc. So from my point of view, now is a very good moment, but I think that we had very good cooperation with very strong and qualitative civic society organizations, and they just showed themselves in the best way. So everyone realized how important it is to have mutual cooperation, to use the best possible capacities from each side. It means that it is kind of like in that movie, it is said that is sort of very good friendship, because you can show what your best side, state from one side and civic society from the other side. So I think that we are now on the path in which we use the best capacities of each side.
Now we can end on that positive note that now we are talking about values, and we do have shared values. So for this kind of partnership, these values are the key. You have to have people within the system who have shared values. I don't say that there are not, there are many, but people who share the values and who are ready to dedicate some time, because it is not easy to find time, and to invest efforts in such processes that I mentioned, like regional process of cooperation. So simply being the role model for teachers and for students by doing that. So organizing conflict prevention mechanism in schools in Serbia, also being the role model for regional cooperation, because the region of the Western Balkans is really small, and that is necessity. We need that. We want to live peacefully with our neighbors simply, and we are trying to support schools and trying to find the bridges, like with Croatia and Serbia. And we know political situation was not easy, but we tried to give our positive contribution to it. So that is one example.
As much as it is possible at the time being. So we are not asking for too much. We are trying to be realistic in cooperation. And I just would like to add that nowadays, if we want to cooperate with some NGO, I'm within the ministry for 2 decades, and I remember quite well how it was difficult at the beginning, because NGOs had to explain quite deeply and extensive what are they doing. Nowadays, different NGOs have their position, their focus of working, and this cooperation is much quicker. You do not need that much time to organize cooperation.
Thank you. Or if you have more questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Final questions, anyone?
Maybe one question?
Yes.
Okay, no, it's just because, I mean, you already mentioned this document, and we can find on your website, and I understood that there might also be, we might also find some documentation about the project there. I was just wondering if you have some evaluation or, I don't know, documentation of results of the project, anything you are comfortable with sharing with us, so that we might use this in order to push also, like in our context, for school mediation and mediation. That would be, I don't know, it's just a question.
Okay, yeah, we have evaluation. We don't have it on our website, but it is in reports, and we had evaluation after each training, but then general evaluation. For example, in Southern Serbia, we just did it in the mixed groups with first of all participants of trainings, but also Norwegian colleagues, Norwegian teachers were coming from time to time, and they were comparing what was in the beginning and afterwards, after the training and after implementation of mediation. So all these evaluations say that the number of conflict cases were significantly lower than before the mediation was put as mechanism in schools. And also teachers try to see at the school level what is happening after the certain period of time, when they continue what they said, those schools that continue doing the actually having the mechanism resolving the conflicts through mediation. So yes, we do that on the regular basis, and for our accredited program, we are also obliged to send these evaluation results to the bureau of and to the ministry to see what type of results we achieved.
Thank you. One final question, if anyone has. Otherwise, I think we can close this webinar. No? Okay, then. Thank you very much, Biljana and Tatjana, again, for your time and for sharing with us your expertise. And thank you to those who joined us today. We recorded the entire webinar, so we will also make this available on our website. So if you want to listen to it again, or if you want to share with your contacts, please feel free to do so. And also, if you want to stay updated about our different upcoming webinars, please check out our website, www.gpac.net, as we have one planned every month. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.